There are rivers that do not only flow through soil and stone, but also through the quiet regions of memory we once forgot. Each ripple is an ancient whisper, each gentle curve a long breath from the earth itself. When you listen slowly, you will feel the river becoming a soft storyteller, carrying delicate secrets made to lull a tired heart into peace. In this video, I will let you drift along those currents, where science feels light as cloud, where knowledge turns into moonlight falling across the water, and you can learn while sleep quietly finds you. If you can sense the calm opening inside you, please like and subscribe to keep this current flowing. And then, as we quietly follow the river toward its distant end, a question rises like the wind. Why does the solar wind blow so abundantly? There are moments in science when the universe feels less like a machine and more like a river that breathes, a soft current moving through the dark, carrying secrets from star to star. And just like relaxing river facts reveal the hidden life of water, the sun reveals the hidden life of light itself. When we ask why the solar wind blows so abundantly, we're really asking why a star chooses to exhale. The solar wind is not just a stream of particles. It is the sun's breath, a constant whisper of charged ions escaping its outer layers, pushed outward by heat and magnetism that never rest. Every second, this gentle but powerful wind expands the boundaries of our solar system, forming a vast, invisible bubble around us called the heliosphere. As astrophysicist Eugene Parker once said, "The sun is not quiet. It is alive." And when I listen to that quote, I always imagine the sun as a great golden river, endlessly flowing. This steady flow is also why the sun loses millions of tons of mass each second. A truth that sounds catastrophic, yet it is simply the nature of a star to burn and to give. Energy becomes light. Light becomes wind, and wind becomes the soft boundary between our world and the wide galaxy. There is a quiet lesson here, that giving does not always mean diminishing. The sun grows lighter, yet it becomes the source of every life form that ever learned to breathe. And if the sun already seems mysterious, the strangest secret appears when we look at its atmosphere. The outer corona is millions of degrees hotter than the visible surface. It is as if the air above a candle were hotter than the flame. Scientists still debate this, but many believe the sun's magnetic field snaps and twists in violent yet invisible ways, releasing bursts of heat that spill outward. When I think of this, I imagine a riverbed glowing brighter at the edges rather than the center. A reminder that nature is not obligated to obey our intuition. The sun also rings like an enormous musical instrument. Waves of pressure move through its body, making it hum in frequencies too low for the human ear. Astronomers use these vibrations to read the sun from within, like listening to a river to understand the stones hidden beneath. Helioseismologist Jørgen Christensen Dalsgaard once said, "The sun sings its secrets to anyone patient enough to hear." And it's true, because the sun's song is not loud. It is steady. It is ancient. Every 11 years, the sun's magnetic field flips in a great cosmic heartbeat. North becomes south. South becomes north. The entire star resets itself. This cycle is the rhythm behind solar storms, behind auroras, behind the appearance and fading of sunspots. Sunspots come and go like shadows drifting across a river surface. Cooler, darker regions where magnetic loops break through the surface. Sometimes they vanish overnight. Sometimes they linger for weeks. Their unpredictability is a quiet reminder that even the most powerful forces in nature are also delicate. Solar flares, bursts of energy brighter than billions of nuclear bombs, leap outward from these magnetic tangles. Most never touch us, but when they do, they can disrupt satellites, to interfere with radio signals, even ripple through our electric grids. Yet, the same storms also paint the skies with auroras, draping Earth in curtains of green and violet light. It is the universe's way of saying that even chaos has its beauty. In the core, the sun burns at over 15 million degrees. Not because it is a fire, but because gravity squeezes atoms so tightly that they fuse, releasing light that will take hundreds of thousands of years to reach the surface. A single photon may bounce inside the sun for eons, wandering like a lost traveler before escaping into space. When that light finally falls on your face, remember that it is older than human civilization, older than every river that carves our continents. The sun's composition is also remarkably simple, mostly hydrogen, some helium, and a sprinkle of heavier elements. It is a giant sphere of the universe's most ancient ingredients. A reminder that complexity is not always needed for power. And its mass, an astonishing 99.8% of the entire solar system. Everything else, planets, moons, asteroids, is simply debris swirling around a star that dominates all. If the solar system were a river, the sun would be the deep central current, guiding all other waters around it. But even giants fade, and the sun is no exception. In billions of years, it will swell into a red giant, then shrink into a white dwarf, a crystal ember glowing quietly in the dark. Astrophysicist Alistair G.W. Cameron once said, "Stars are the ashes of cosmic fire, yet their endings give birth to new beginnings." And I think there is a profound lesson in that, not just for stars, but for us. Everything bright eventually softens, but softness is not the end. It is simply a new form of light. As a scientist, I have spent years watching how simple truths in nature mirror our own inner lives. The sun gives and grows lighter, yet it becomes the reason life exists. The solar wind escapes, yet it forms a shield around the planets. Solar storms disturb our world, yet they paint the skies with color. And I think that is the quiet message of this cosmic river, that loss can still generate beauty, that pressure creates light, that endings are simply transformations. So as you listen, as your breath slows, and your thoughts drift like soft water, let the sun remind you that even the most powerful forces can be gentle. The universe is not roaring, it is whispering. And in that whisper is the story of everything that ever lived. If you feel calm, if your mind feels a little softer, then this journey has done its work. And now, as we let the last traces of sunlight fade into the quiet, let the night carry you where you need to go. The earth is a wonder that speaks softly, a world that feels more like a living poem than a planet. And every time I explore it as a scientist, I realize how little we truly understand about the home that carries us. Its density, the highest among all the planets, holds a story older than memory. A story shaped by iron sinking to the core, by gravity tightening its embrace, by billions of years of collisions and fire. Earth is heavy, not just in mass, but in meaning. Carl Sagan once said, "The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena." But to me, it also feels like the most delicate vessel ever crafted. And perhaps its greatest miracle is water. Not simply water itself, but the way it sings in all three states: solid, liquid, vapor. This alone makes Earth unique among every world we have studied. Ice shaping mountains, rivers carving valleys, clouds weaving weather patterns that nourish the green pulse of life. In a calming nature documentary, we often see water as scenery. But when you understand the physics behind it, you realize it is the planetary heartbeat. I have spent nights in research stations listening to melting ice drip from ancient glaciers. And in those quiet moments I felt as if the earth were breathing right beside me. But water is not Earth's only signature. We are the only planet with plate tectonics. The crust is not static. It moves, shifts, collides, creating continents, mountains, earthquakes. This endless stirring recycles carbon, stabilizes climate, shapes the geography that holds our stories. Geologist Tanya Atwater once said, "Plate tectonics is the Earth's way of keeping itself alive." When I hear that sentence, I feel something in my chest loosen, as if Earth itself were a great living creature, adjusting its bones, stretching after a long night. This movement, combined with the Earth's tilt, gives birth to something humans have always cherished: the seasons. A simple tilt of 23.5 degrees. That small shift crafts the cycle of growth and rest, bloom and retreat, spring rising, winter folding. Without this tilt, there would be no orchards blossoming, no migrations of birds across continents, no changing tapestry of colors that keep our hearts awake. This is a reminder that imbalance, when gentle, can create beauty. The universe doesn't need perfection to flourish. It only needs rhythm. Yet beneath this beauty lies the unseen guardian of our world, the magnetic field. Born deep within the molten core, it becomes a shield stretching far into space, bending dangerous radiation, guiding cosmic particles like a mother guiding her children gently away from harm. Without this silent protector, the atmosphere would be stripped away. Oceans would vanish. The ground would be scorched. As physicist James Van Allen said, "Our magnetic field is one of Earth's most precious gifts." But even the strongest shield feels pressure. And when the solar wind rises, the magnetosphere bends, compresses, ripples like a river struck by a sudden gust. During strong geomagnetic storms, particles rush along the magnetic poles, colliding with our atmosphere, painting the sky in colors that seem stolen from dreams. Auroras are not just beauty. They are impact made visible. A reminder that light is often born from conflict. When the magnetosphere is attacked more fiercely, satellites can falter, radio waves can scatter, power grids can strain under geomagnetic pressure. Yet in this tension between Earth and Sun, there is a strange tenderness. Two cosmic bodies shaping one another, teaching us that even storms have purpose. As a scientist, I have always been humbled by how deeply Earth mirrors our inner world. Density reminds me that strength comes from what lies at your core, not from what appears on the surface. Water in 3 states teaches that adaptability is not a weakness, but the secret to endurance. Plate tectonics shows that movement, even painful movement, keeps us alive. The seasons whisper that change is not something to fear, but something to flow with. And the magnetic field reminds me that protection often comes from deep within. There is a night I think of often. A night at the edge of a quiet valley where auroras rippled above me like silk curtains touched by celestial hands. I was there to measure solar wind fluctuations. But in truth, I ended up measuring something much softer. My own sense of belonging to this planet, to this fragile blue miracle. I realized then that Earth does not simply host life. It nurtures it, teaches it, and surrounds it with gentle rules that allow hope to survive. And this is the heart of every calming nature documentary. not just to show beauty, but to reveal the quiet intelligence woven into every part of the earth we walk on. Science becomes more than knowledge. It becomes gratitude. If there is a lesson hidden inside all these mysteries, it is this: the earth is not simply where we live. It is who we become. Its density becomes our resilience. Its seasons become our inner cycles. Its magnetic field becomes our courage. And its storms remind us that even when pressure rises, light will always find a way to emerge. Tonight, as your thoughts settle like dust on a quiet trail, let the earth hold you. Let its stories move through you, slow and steady, like rivers traveling toward the sea. The universe is vast, but home is here. There is a silence in the night sky that feels older than memory. And in that silence, the moon drifts like a pale lantern carried by invisible hands. When I study it as a scientist, I often feel as though I am listening to a river of ancient light flowing above us. The same way river science for sleep videos let us drift into calm. The moon is not just a companion, it is a paradox. It is unusually large compared to Earth, far larger than what physics suggests a world of our size should have. Most moons are tiny, fragile, captured stones that orbit giant planets. But ours is different. So large that early astronomers believed it must have been carved from Earth itself. And in a way it was. The leading explanation is the giant impact theory, a collision in which a Mars-sized world struck the young Earth, flinging molten rock into orbit, where it cooled and gathered into the moon we know. As planetary scientist Robin Canup once said, "The moon is Earth's child, and yet it became its own world." When I first read those words, I felt something shift inside me, a reminder that we can come from the same origin yet grow into entirely different forms of light. But the strangeness does not stop there. The moon is slowly leaving us, drifting away at 3.8 centimeters each year, a distance so small you cannot see it, yet so steady that it has been happening for billions of years. This slow separation is caused by tides. The moon pulls Earth's oceans into gentle bulges, and those bulges pull back, giving the moon a tiny push forward, lifting it into a higher orbit. It is a cosmic dance. Two bodies exchanging, motion the way. Two breaths exchange warmth. Sometimes when I stand on a quiet coastline watching the tide rise, I think about how the moon is stepping away from us, not out of rejection, but because even celestial relationships evolve. The tides themselves are one of the moon's most exquisite gifts. When its gravity stretches Earth's oceans, it creates the rhythmic pulse we call high and low tide, a movement so gentle we rarely think about it, and yet so powerful it shapes coastlines, feeds marine life, and influences climates. Physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson once said, "The moon is the Earth's stabilizer and sculptor. How beautiful it is to realize that our world is carved not only by rivers and wind, but by a silent partner glowing above our nights. And speaking of rivers, every time I watch ocean tides rise and fall, I think about the rivers on Earth, responding to the moon's pull. It feels like the whole planet is breathing with it. Slow, steady, like a living organism learning harmony. If you have ever drifted to sleep listening to river science for sleep content, you have felt that rhythm in your own body. But the moon has another secret. Its silence preserves everything. There is no wind there, no rain, no flowing water. So when astronauts walked across its surface and left footprints, they created marks that may last for millions of years, perhaps longer than any trace humans have left on Earth. In the moon's eternal stillness, nothing washes away history. And yet, despite that quiet, the moon is not entirely peaceful. It has moonquakes, trembling motions that ripple through its crust. Some come from the tidal forces of Earth pulling on it. Some come from the cooling of its interior, causing rock to shrink and crack. And some come from meteor impacts that strike without warning. For the moon is a place with no protective atmosphere. Seismologist Clive Neal once said, "The moon is still alive in its own slow, quiet way." A reminder that even stillness contains movement. When I reflect on all this, I find myself humbled by the way the moon mirrors our human experience. It was born out of violence, yet it became gentle. It drifts away, but still shapes our world. It holds memories for eons, yet trembles with internal change. And like us, it shines not because it owns light, but because it reflects it. There is a night I will never forget. I was standing at the edge of a quiet lake. The water so still, it looked like a sheet of glass holding the moon in its hands. Everything felt suspended, as if time had loosened its grip. In that moment, I understood something I had missed for years. The moon teaches us the power of presence. We don't always need to create our own brilliance. Sometimes we only need to reflect the light already offered to us. It also teaches us that distance is not the end. Even as it drifts away, its influence continues, shaping tides, guiding biological rhythms, stabilizing Earth's tilt. A separation does not always mean a loss of connection. Sometimes it simply means space being created for new harmony to arise. And perhaps the most profound lesson of all is this: stillness is not emptiness. The moon sits in silence, but within that silence are stories of birth, separation, motion, memory. Just like a river seems quiet from afar, yet carries entire worlds within its flow. Just like our own minds settle into calm while currents of thought drift, below the surface. Tonight, as your breath slows and your thoughts soften, let the moon be your companion. Let its distant glow remind you that beauty can come from impact, that change can be gentle, and that even in silence there is motion guiding you forward. The universe is wide, but the moon walks beside you. There are worlds in our solar system that feel like riddles whispered into the dark, and Mercury is one of them. A small, burned world, carved by ancient fire, yet holding secrets so gentle they almost feel like a lullaby meant for soothing bedtime science. When I look at Mercury through the eyes of a scientist, I often feel as though I am watching a candle flame frozen in the middle of space. One of its strangest mysteries lies in the quiet shadows of its poles. Despite being scorched by the sun, hot enough to melt metal, Mercury hides pockets of ice, untouched, unbroken, shining like ancient crystals preserved in eternal night. These craters at the poles never see sunlight, not even for a moment. The sun's rays strike the planet so steeply that the crater floors remain locked in shadow, colder than the surface of Pluto. Astronomer Sean Solomon once said, "Mercury is a world of extremes, but in its darkest corners it cradles water the same way Earth cradles life." When I first heard that, I felt the quiet poetry of it, that even in a world of fire, the cosmos preserves islands of calm. But Mercury's silence deepens in another way. Unlike Earth, Mercury has no atmosphere to speak of, only an exosphere, a ghost-like veil of atoms drifting above its surface, so thin that a single breath on Earth contains more molecules than the entire sky above Mercury. This happens because the planet's gravity is weak, and the sun's heat is relentless. Gas cannot remain. It escapes to space the moment it rises. To me, this exosphere feels like a metaphor for fragility, a reminder that not every world is wrapped in protection. Yet even a fragile world has value. This delicate world also played a role in reshaping our understanding of the universe. Mercury's orbit precesses in a way classical physics could not explain, shifting a little more each century. For decades, astronomers believed something massive must be tugging on it. A hidden planet, perhaps. But the answer was far more profound. Einstein's theory of general relativity predicted exactly the discrepancy that astronomers observed. Gravity was not a force acting from a distance, but the curvature of space-time itself. Einstein once said, "To understand Mercury is to understand the structure of the temp universe." And he was right. Mercury, small and shimmering, became the proof that space-time bends. When I teach this to students, I always tell them that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest truths. Another enigma lies within Mercury's heart. Its core is gigantic, occupying nearly 80% of its radius, far larger than that of any other rocky planet. Why would such a tiny world hold such a massive heart of metal? There are theories, each one like a thread woven through cosmic possibility. Perhaps a colossal collision stripped away its outer layers, leaving only the metal-rich interior. Perhaps the heat of the early sun scorched the lighter materials away, letting heavy iron sink inward. Planetary scientist Louise Proctor once said, "Mercury is a survivor of tragedies we can hardly imagine." When I contemplate that, I think of how life shapes us through what we lose, not just through what we keep. And like many lonely worlds, Mercury has no moon. Its proximity to the sun makes it impossible. Any companion would be pulled away by the sun's gravity or crash into Mercury itself. This solitude gives Mercury a certain stillness, as if it glides through space without needing to share its orbit with another body. Sometimes, when I think of Mercury's path, unwavering, singular, I feel the lesson woven inside it. Not every journey requires company. Some journeys are meant to be walked alone. There is a night I remember clearly. I was studying Mercury's magnetometer data in a dim laboratory. The room's silent except for the quiet hum of equipment. Outside the window, the city lights flickered like distant stars. I thought about how Mercury orbits so close to the sun, bathed in light, yet holding its secrets in perpetual darkness. That moment taught me something about contrast, that even a world wrapped in brilliance can shelter icy shadows, that even the closest things can remain mysterious. And as I speak these things now, slowly, gently, like a river slipping between stones, I hope you can feel what Mercury has taught me. It teaches resilience, surviving fire and impact to become something stable. It teaches silence, existing without an atmosphere, yet leaving an imprint on physics itself. It teaches humility, that small worlds can reveal vast truths. And most importantly, it teaches that a lonely path does not mean a meaningless one. The cosmos is full of planets louder and brighter than Mercury, full of storms more dramatic, full of atmospheres thick and roaring. Yet this tiny world whispers, and in its whisper we hear entire chapters of cosmic history. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to soften, and the quiet folds around you like a blanket of starlight, let Mercury's story settle in your mind. Let its extremes soothe you, its stillness slow you, its survival inspire you. The universe is wide, but even the smallest world has something to teach. And sometimes, the smallest world is exactly the one you need to hear before sleep. There are planets that burn like forgotten myths, and among them, Venus stands alone. When I study Venus, I always feel as though I am listening to a distant melody, something slow and haunting, the kind of sound you hear in peaceful nature sounds when the wind brushes over stone. But Venus is not peaceful, not in the way Earth is. Its beauty is sharp, dangerous, luminous. It burns hotter than Mercury even though it sits farther from the Sun. This is one of the great paradoxes of our solar system. The reason lies in its atmosphere, a suffocating blanket of carbon dioxide thick enough to turn the planet into a furnace. Heat cannot escape. It builds and builds until surface temperatures soar above 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Planetary scientist Fred Taylor once said, "Venus is the ultimate greenhouse experiment, one that never ends." His words echo in my mind every time I think about the fragility of climates and how easy it is for balance to crumble. But Venus holds more mysteries. It spins backward, opposite the direction of almost every other planet in the solar system. A slow, stubborn, retrograde turn. It is as if Venus decided long ago that it would dance to its own rhythm, refusing the choreography of the cosmos. Some believe a massive collision flipped the planet. Others think the Sun's gravitational pull gradually twisted its rotation. Whatever the cause, the result is a world where the Sun rises in the west and sets in the east. Every time I imagine that reversal, I feel a strange comfort that even planets are allowed to be different. And its strangeness does not end there. A day on Venus is longer than a Venusian year. It rotates so slowly that it takes 243 Earth days to complete a single turn, but only 225 days to orbit the Sun. Time itself behaves differently on this world, stretching and folding like warm light on water. Sometimes I think about what it would feel like to stand on such a planet, to feel time unspool around you, to age in a rhythm entirely unlike your own. It reminds me that time is not absolute, that the universe holds many ways to measure a life. Yet, despite its thick atmosphere, Venus has no magnetic field. Its core does not generate the protective bubble that Earth enjoys. Without it, solar particles bombard the upper atmosphere, stripping away water, removing any chance for oceans to survive. Astronomer David Grinspoon once said, "Venus is what happens when a world loses its shield." That sentence stays with me, especially on nights when I think about the invisible protections in our own lives. Some shields are strong, magnetic, planetary, and some shields are emotional, formed by choices and boundaries. Venus teaches both lessons. And then there is the matter of its loneliness. Venus has no moon, not a single companion to orbit it, whisper to it, reflect sunlight back to it. Theories vary. Some say any moon Venus once had was torn away by the Sun. Others say a violent collision destroyed its potential satellite before it could form. Whatever the reason, Venus spins alone, wrapped in clouds, quietly brilliant. And I admit, there are nights when I look at Venus from a dark field on Earth, the air filled with peaceful nature sounds, and I feel a soft ache for that isolation. Not out of pity, but out of recognition. Sometimes brilliance demands solitude. What fascinates me most about Venus is how often it contradicts expectation. It glows like a symbol of beauty in our sky. Yet beneath that glow, it is harsh, toxic, relentless. It reminds me that appearances, whether planetary or human, rarely tell the full story. When the first space probes descended into Venus's atmosphere, the transmissions lasted only minutes before the machines melted, crushed, silenced. And yet those brief transmissions changed everything, showing us a world of sulfuric clouds, crushing pressure, and landscapes lit by an orange haze. I remember studying those images as a young scientist, feeling both awe and grief, as though I had glimpsed a place that should not exist. Venus taught me then that not all beauty is gentle, that some beauty burns. And so we return to the lessons this planet carries. Lessons wrapped in heat, in silence, in slow rotation. Venus teaches that climate is fragile, that warmth can turn to fire if balance is lost. It teaches that being different is not a flaw, but a testament to resilience. It teaches that a journey can feel long, impossibly long, yet still be meaningful. It teaches that losing protection can reshape a world, but also reveal truths hidden beneath. And above all, it teaches that loneliness does not erase brilliance. There is a moment I return to often. A night when I stood on a quiet hillside, the air cool, the wind slow, carrying peaceful nature sounds across the grass. Venus hung above me like a pearl of steady light, unwavering, sure of its place in the sky. And in that soft silver glow, I understood something about myself. That even in moments of heat, pressure, or isolation, I was still allowed to shine. Not by imitating the Earth, or Mercury, or any world but my own. Tonight, as your breath settles, and your thoughts drift like clouds of pale sulfur across a silent horizon, let Venus guide you. Let its contradictions comfort you, its mysteries calm you, its resilience whisper to you. The universe is wide, and every world holds a lesson, even the brightest one in the evening sky. Mars is a world of scars and silence, a desert carved by ancient force. And when I study it, I feel the same calm I find in rivers explained for sleep. That slow drifting sensation where science becomes a gentle current carrying you through the dark. Among all its mysteries, the greatest stands like a wound stretching across half the planet. Valles Marineris, the largest canyon in the solar system. It is not a valley shaped by water like those on Earth, but a vast fracture. The crust itself pulled apart as Mars cooled and shrank. Planetary geologist Jim Bell once said, "Valles Marineris is the mark of a planet breaking under its own ancient weight." Those words linger with me. A reminder that even worlds crack open when the pressure becomes too great. Nearby rises Olympus Mons, a mountain so colossal it defies imagination. 3 times taller than Everest. Its base wider than the entire state of Arizona. It grew so large because Mars has no plate tectonics. On Earth, volcanic hotspots move as the plates drift, creating long chains of islands like Hawaii. But on Mars, the crust is still, unmoving. So the volcano erupts in the same place for millions of years, building a tower of fire that reaches almost into space. Sometimes when I look at images of Olympus Mons, I imagine a mountain born from persistence, not speed. A mountain that whispers the lesson that slow does not mean small. Slow can mean unstoppable. Like Earth, Mars has seasons. This happens because its axis tilts at almost the same angle as ours, creating cycles of warming and cooling that paint the world in shifting tones of red and gold. It is strange to think that a barren world shares this rhythm with Earth. A world full of oceans, forests, living breath. In that shared tilt, I sense a quiet kinship, as if the planets themselves sway in a cosmic dance. But Mars is also a place of storms. Storms that can swallow the entire planet for weeks, turning day into dusk. These storms begin with tiny grains of dust heated by the sun. Warm dust rises. Winds lift more dust, and a feedback loop erupts until an entire hemisphere is wrapped in red haze. Astronomer Philip Christensen once said, "Dust is the lifeblood of Martian weather." And how poetic that is, that on a dead world, storms are born not from oceans or clouds, but from the simplest particles. A reminder that even the smallest things can shape a world. Yet, for all its storms, Mars lost something essential long ago. Its atmosphere, its magnetic field. Billions of years back, its core cooled. The dynamo inside fell silent, and without a magnetic shield, the solar wind stripped away its air. Oceans evaporated. Rivers vanished. The climate collapsed into a dry, cold desert. NASA scientist Bruce Jakosky once said, "Mars did not die suddenly. It faded." Those words hit deeply, because fading is something humans understand. We fade when we lose warmth, when we lose shield, when time erodes what once protected us. But fading is not failure. Mars still holds memories of rivers, lakes, and perhaps life. There is dignity in that. And sometimes pieces of Mars come to us. Literally. Meteorites found on Earth have been identified as fragments of Mars, launched into space by ancient impacts, wandering for millions of years before falling into our deserts and ice fields. Imagine that. Stones of another world resting quietly in our hands. Stones older than our species. Geochemist Everly Hirsch once said, "Meteorites are postcards from worlds we have yet to touch." I carry that sentence with me, because it reminds me that connection does not always require contact. Sometimes a fragment is enough. And then there are the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos. They look nothing like our moon. They are small, misshapen, dark, like captured asteroids stumbling through orbit. Their surfaces are rough, cracked, ancient. To me, they feel like drifting memories, fragments of something that never fully formed. Most scientists believe they truly are captured asteroids, pulled in long ago by Mars's gravity. A reminder that even in space, companionship can come from unexpected places. As I reflect on Mars, its canyons, its towers of fire, its fading shield, its wandering moons, I realize it is not a dead world, but a world mid-story, a world still teaching. Mars teaches me that wounds can shape beauty. Valles Marineris is a scar, yet breathtaking. Mars teaches me that persistence builds mountains. Olympus Mons rises because it never moved away from its fire. Mars teaches me that cycles matter. Its seasons echo ours, showing that even barren worlds can follow rhythm. Mars teaches me that storms begin with small things, a single grain of dust, rising, becoming a global event. A lesson about the power of beginnings. Mars teaches me that losing protection changes everything. But change does not erase history. Mars teaches me that fragments travel far, and that even broken pieces can become bridges between worlds. Mars teaches me that companionship is not always symmetrical. Its moons are strange, imperfect, yet they follow it faithfully, orbit after orbit. And finally, Mars teaches me that silence can be powerful. Its landscapes are quiet, but that quiet is full of story. Tonight, as you breathe slowly and the boundaries of thought soften, let Mars drift into your mind like a red lantern floating across the dark. Let its scars comfort you, its mountains steady you, its storms humble you, and its moons remind you that orbiting a dream does not require perfection. The universe is wide, but Mars walks beside you. Jupiter is not just a planet. It is a symphony of storms. moons, magnetic echoes, and ancient light. Every time I speak about it in a gentle science video, I feel as if I am guiding the audience through an ocean made of sky, a place where gravity thickens like poetry and all familiar rules soften. One of Jupiter's greatest wonders is its more than 90 moons, a drifting constellation of companions, each one carrying a fragment of the planet's history. The reason Jupiter has so many moons lies in its vast gravity. It is so massive, so dominant, that it captures wandering asteroids, icy worlds, and leftover debris from the early solar system. Astrophysicist Scott Bolton once said, "Jupiter is the king not because it rules, but because everything near it falls into orbit." Those words resonate with me, reminding me that influence can be silent, subtle, gravitational. And of course, there is the Great Red Spot, a storm wider than Earth, swirling for centuries. Its longevity comes from Jupiter's lack of solid surface. Storms never crash into mountains, never lose energy to land. They simply circle, sustained by heat rising from the planet's deep interior. Astronomer Amy Simon once said, "The red spot is a wound that refuses to close." I sometimes think of it differently, as a reminder that motion can outlive the moment that started it. But Jupiter's strength is not only atmospheric, it is magnetic. Its magnetic field is the strongest of any planet in the solar system, more than 20,000 times stronger than Earth's. This power comes from its vast core, where metallic hydrogen churns like an ocean of liquid electricity. To me, this magnetic field feels like the heartbeat of a giant, pulsing, expanding, shaping space around it. That magnetic force feeds Jupiter's greatest mystery. It radiates more energy than it receives from the Sun. The planet glows with internal heat, heat born from its original formation, heat still leaking out after billions of years, a warmth that refuses to fade. Planetary scientist Lee Fletcher once said, "Jupiter is a failed star still shining from within." When I heard that, I felt an unexpected comfort. The idea that you can fail to become something enormous and still be radiant. And wrapped around this inner glow is the magnetosphere, a structure so large that it could swallow the Sun. If our eyes could see magnetic fields, Jupiter would appear like a vast blue flame stretching millions of kilometers into the dark, touching moons, capturing particles, sculpting auroras brighter than any on Earth. Even the solar wind must bend around it, as though Jupiter stands with its own invisible shield held high. Inside that shield are the moons, each one a world with its own personality. Io, the tortured one, the most volcanic body in the solar system. Its surface erupts constantly, fountains of molten rock soaring hundreds of kilometers into the sky. This fury is caused by tidal forces. Jupiter pulls on Io. The other moons pull on Io. And the poor world is stretched and squeezed like a beating drum. Geologist Rosalie Lopes once said, "Io is alive with fire. You can almost hear it breathing." I think about that often. How pressure creates heat. How tension creates transformation. Then there is Ganymede, the largest moon in the solar system, bigger than Mercury. A world with mountains, oceans beneath its ice, and most astonishing of all, its own magnetic field. No other moon possesses such a shield. Scientists believe it is generated by a liquid iron core, turning slowly, creating a magnetic whisper that wraps the moon in an unseen glow. When I look at Ganymede's data, I feel the soft thrill of encountering something that should not exist. A moon pretending to be a planet, carrying its own strength. All of this makes Jupiter feel less like a single world and more like a miniature solar system, a kingdom of storms and satellites, a place where everything is in motion, where gravity conducts a silent orchestra, where the faintest particle can spark auroras that shimmer across the night side of moons hundreds of millions of miles away. As I reflect on Jupiter, I realize it has taught me more about life than I ever expected from a gas giant. It teaches that greatness does not require being solid, that you can be made of storms and still hold yourself together. It teaches that influence can be gentle, like gravity drawing companions into orbit. It teaches that pressure can create heat, but also light. It teaches that you can radiate more energy than you receive, simply by carrying the warmth of your beginnings. And it teaches that even giants need company. No world in the solar system is more surrounded, more orbited, more accompanied. There is a night I think of often, a night when I was studying Jupiter's auroras on a dim screen. While outside my window, the wind moved through the trees like distant waves. Something about that moment felt like drifting, as if I were floating between two worlds. Jupiter glowing on one side, Earth breathing on the other. And in that gentle quiet I realized something simple. The universe is not asking us to be Jupiter, or Earth, or any particular world. It is only asking us to rotate in our own rhythm, shine with our own warmth, and hold close the moons that choose to orbit our lives. Tonight, as you drift deeper into stillness, let Jupiter's vastness soften you. Let its storms remind you that chaos can be beautiful. Let its moons remind you that companionship comes in unexpected forms. Let its glow remind you that inner fire matters more than any light you receive. The universe is wide, but Jupiter walks beside you. Saturn has always felt to me like a dream you can almost touch. A world wrapped not in clouds alone, but in poetry. Its rings sweeping around it like the brushstrokes of a patient painter. Every time I speak about it in a sleep aid nature documentary, I feel myself drifting, as if Saturn pulls the mind into a softer gravity. And yet, those rings are disappearing, slowly, steadily, like snow melting under distant sunlight. They fall into Saturn as icy rain, pulled downward by the planet's magnetic field. NASA scientist James O'Donoghue once said, "We are living in the era when Saturn's rings still exist, but our distant descendants will only see a bare world." When I heard that, something inside me softened. A reminder that beauty does not have to last forever to matter. These rings that look enormous from afar are shockingly thin, only about 100 meters thick, thinner than a neighborhood building. They are made of countless particles, from grains of ice, like powdered sugar, to chunks as large as mountains, floating, gliding, colliding in slow motion, glowing in reflected sunlight. Planetary scientist Linda Spilker once said, "The rings are a cosmic ballet, each particle dancing to Saturn's gravity." And it truly feels like that. A dance that began long before us and will end long after. Saturn itself is another mystery. Its density is so low, it would float in a cosmic ocean if such an ocean existed. A gas giant made mostly of hydrogen and helium, light elements forming a heavy presence. There is something humbling about that a planet so grand, so visually magnificent, could be made of the lightest stuff in the universe. It reminds me that greatness does not always need weight. Sometimes it simply needs presence. But Saturn's strangest wonder may be at its North Pole. A storm shaped like a perfect hexagon, 6 sides locked in an eternal spin. Winds flowing at incredible speeds, yet maintaining a geometric precision no other planet displays. Scientists believe the shape comes from standing waves in the atmosphere, like ripples forming patterns on a vibrating surface. Kevin Baines of NASA once said, "It is the universe showing us that chaos can follow rules we have yet to understand." I sometimes imagine standing beneath that hexagon, letting the symmetry remind me that even storms can be organized. But the rings and storms are only the beginning. Saturn's moons hold an entire library of secrets. Enceladus, a tiny icy moon, cracks open at its south pole, sending plumes of water into space. These geysers rise hundreds of kilometers, shimmering like silver snow. They exist because heat from tides, caused by Saturn's gravity, warms a hidden ocean beneath the ice. Planetary scientist Carolyn Porco once said, "Enceladus may be the most promising place for life beyond Earth." And when I see images of those plumes, I feel a quiet hope. that the universe has more stories of life than we dare to imagine. Titan, the largest moon, drifts like a world stolen from a dream. It has clouds, wind, rivers, lakes, but not of water, of methane. Liquid methane fills its lakes, rains from its skies, carves its valleys. It is the only other place in the solar system with a full weather cycle, a kind of mirror universe where cold takes the place of warmth. Astrobiologist Chris McKay once said, "Titan is Earth's strange sibling, familiar yet alien." When I look at Titan's landscapes, I feel a strange homesickness, as if I'm seeing a memory from a life I never lived. And all of this ties back to why Saturn has always felt spiritual to me. It is a world of contrasts, softness and violence, permanence and loss, simplicity and impossible geometry. As I reflect on Saturn, I realize it teaches us more than science. It teaches that some beauty is temporary, like the fading rings, that some storms follow patterns beyond understanding, that fragility can hide enormous strength, that worlds can be light and still immense, that life may exist in places we once dismissed as impossible. There is a memory I return to often, a night when I stood under a silent sky, the air cool, the world hushed, as if it were listening too. Through a telescope, I saw Saturn, small but perfect, its rings glowing like the halo of a forgotten deity. And for a moment, everything felt aligned. My breath, the stars, the slow turning of the cosmos. It felt like Saturn was not just a planet, but a reminder. A reminder that you can be made of light materials and still hold a massive presence. A reminder that storms can follow shape and meaning. A reminder that losing something, like Saturn losing its rings, does not make you any less beautiful. A reminder that even frozen moons can carry oceans. A reminder that even alien skies can have rivers and lakes, just not the kind we expect. Tonight, as your thoughts begin to settle, let Saturn guide you into sleep. Let its fading rings remind you that endings can be graceful. Let its moons remind you that wonder comes in small sizes too. Let its storms remind you that even chaos can be beautiful. The universe is wide, but Saturn walks beside you. Uranus has always felt to me like a planet that drifts between reality and dream. A pale blue lantern turning slowly in the dark. As quiet as the voice that guides you through relaxing water stories. Among all the planets, it is perhaps the most mysterious. Not because it shouts for attention, but because it whispers. One of its strangest secrets is its tilt. A tilt so extreme that Uranus lies almost on its side, spinning like a cosmic wheel instead of a top. Most scientists believe a massive collision long ago knocked the planet sideways, reshaping not only its axis, but its destiny. Astronomer Tom Helfenstein once said, "If a world could remember trauma, Uranus would be the one." There is something achingly human in that idea, that even planets carry the memory of impact. And when I look at Uranus turning slowly, rolled onto its side like someone curled inward, I feel an unexpected compassion. Yet Uranus hides beauty within its strangeness. Deep within its icy mantle, scientists believe carbon atoms are pressed so intensely that they crystallize into diamonds, falling like glittering rain toward the core. Diamond storms, shimmering in the dark. Planetary physicist Kevin Baines once said, "On Uranus, diamonds are not treasure, they are weather." And when I heard that, I felt a soft shock, a reminder that value depends on context, and that the universe does not share our idea of preciousness. The rings of Uranus add another layer of subtlety. Unlike Saturn's shining arcs, the rings of Uranus are dark, narrow, quiet, made of carbon-rich particles. They absorb light instead of reflecting it, giving the planet a muted crown only visible when sunlight hits it just right. Sometimes I think the rings of Uranus feel like memories. Faint, delicate, only seen when you look at them from the right angle. Astronomer Heidi Hammel once said, "Uranus does not perform for us. It reveals itself only when it chooses." How gentle that is. How true of so many things in life. The seasons of Uranus form another miracle. Because of its sideways tilt, each pole spends 42 years in sunlight, followed by 42 years in darkness. An entire generation of light and an entire generation of night. Imagine a world where dawn comes once every 4 decades, where shadows stretch across half a lifetime. To me, the seasons of Uranus feel like the breathing cycles of a sleeping giant. Inhaling light, exhaling darkness. When I reflect on why these things matter, I find myself drifting into a softer way of thinking. The universe is not made of noise, but of rhythm, of repetition, of gentle variations that echo through billions of years. And Uranus, with its sideways spin, its diamond storms, its shadowed rings, its long, slow seasons, embodies that rhythm in a way no other planet does. There is a memory I cherish. A moment from a night long ago when I was observing Uranus through a small telescope. The sky quiet, the air cool, the world hushed around me. The planet appeared as a pale blue dot. Nothing more, nothing less. Yet in that tiny circle I saw layers of story, layers of silence, layers of cosmic endurance. Sometimes the smallest view holds the deepest truth. Uranus teaches me that change can come from collision, yet life continues its orbit. It teaches that beauty can hide in darkness, like its faint rings. It teaches that storms can forge diamonds. That pressure can create brilliance. It teaches that seasons do not need to be short to be meaningful, that some cycles unfold slowly, patiently, over decades. It teaches that being different, even radically different, is a form of identity. And above all, Uranus teaches that silence is not emptiness. It is simply another way the universe speaks. I think often about how Uranus sits at the edge of visibility, just barely bright enough to be seen with the naked eye, yet holding storms that churn miles beneath its clouds. It feels like a metaphor for the quiet people in our lives, the ones who do not shine loudly, but hold entire oceans of experience beneath the surface. When spacecraft finally flew past Uranus, Voyager 2 sent back images that changed everything. A smooth turquoise sphere, serene, unbothered. And yet behind that calm was a world built from collision, pressure, slow unfolding seasons. Astronomer Carl Sagan once said, "The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us." Uranus embodies that truth and gently invites us to accept mystery without resistance. Sometimes, when I listen to relaxing water stories, I imagine Uranus drifting across the dark, its rings whispering, its storms forming diamonds in the deep, its poles trading decades of day and night. In that image I find peace, because it reminds me that time can move slowly and still be full of meaning. Tonight, as your breathing softens and your mind grows quiet, let Uranus guide you into a gentler space. Let its tilt remind you that a change of angle can change the entire story. Let its diamond rain remind you that pressure can become beauty. Let its faint rings remind you that not all radiance needs to be bright. Let its long seasons remind you that every life moves at its own pace. The universe is wide, but Uranus turns beside you. Neptune has always felt like the ocean of the cosmos, a deep blue world turning slowly at the edge of sunlight. Quiet, distant, but filled with motion so powerful it seems almost impossible. Whenever I speak about Neptune in my work, I feel the same drifting calm I find in dreamy river facts, a sense of water flowing somewhere far away, pulling my thoughts into a softer rhythm. Its winds are the fastest in the solar system, faster even than the speed of sound, whipping through its atmosphere at more than 2,000 kilometers per hour. It seems contradictory that the farthest major planet from the Sun, a world so cold that nitrogen freezes, would hold such furious storms. Scientists believe the answer lies in its internal heat. Neptune radiates more energy than it receives, creating temperature contrasts that set its winds into motion. Atmospheric scientist Heidi Hammel once said, "Neptune is calm in appearance, but its winds could tear a planet apart." Those words stay with me, a reminder that quiet does not always mean gentle. The mystery deepens when we consider Neptune's heat. It glows from within, releasing warmth left over from its violent formation, as if the planet has never fully cooled. Some theories suggest gravitational compression. Others suggest friction from convecting layers. But whatever the reason, Neptune burns softly beneath its frozen clouds. Astrophysicist Lee Fletcher once said, "Neptune holds the size, memory of its birth, like a warm ember in deep water." And I often think of that, especially on nights when I consider how we too carry embers of old stories. But Neptune did not first appear through a telescope. It appeared through mathematics. In the 19th century, astronomers noticed that Uranus drifted from its predicted orbit, pulled by something unseen. They calculated the location of this invisible force, and when telescopes pointed there, Neptune was waiting. A planet discovered through pure thought, through numbers, through trust in the universe's hidden logic. Astronomer Urbain Le Verrier wrote, "I saw the planet at the tip of my pen." To me, that is one of the most beautiful moments in science. The idea that intuition and mathematics, when woven together, can reveal entire worlds. But Neptune holds more than storms and equations. It holds Triton, a moon that moves backward. Instead of orbiting in the direction of Neptune's spin, Triton orbits in the opposite direction. This backward motion suggests something extraordinary. Triton was once a wandering object, perhaps a dwarf planet from the Kuiper belt, captured by Neptune's gravity long ago. Its orbit is a quiet rebellion, a reminder that not everything must follow the rotation of the world it belongs to. Planetary scientist William McKinnon once said, "Triton is a world with a past it cannot hide." I feel that deeply, because all of us carry orbits shaped by our history. And Triton holds one more secret. It has cryovolcanoes. Volcanoes, not of molten rock, but of freezing nitrogen, water ice, and methane. These icy eruptions shoot plumes kilometers into the sky, forming dark streaks across its frozen surface. The heat that drives them likely comes from tidal forces, the same cosmic push and pull that stirs oceans on Earth. To think of a world where volcanoes breathe cold instead of fire, where mountains erupt with frost instead of flame, is to be reminded that nature's creativity is endless. When I reflect on Neptune and Triton together, I find myself drifting into the same calm I feel when reading dreamy river facts. That soft awareness that the universe flows, even where there is no water. Neptune flows through storms, through mathematics, through heat that refuses to die. Triton flows through memory, through backward orbits, through eruptions of ice instead of stone. There is a moment I remember clearly. A night when I watched Neptune rise over the horizon through a large observatory dome. The world outside silent. The stars sharp like silver dust. Neptune glowed like a tear of Temlo, blue light. Steady, serene. And I felt something shift in me. A realization that not all power is loud. Not all storms are visible. And not all worlds need sunlight to shine. Neptune teaches me that distance does not diminish strength. Even at the edge of the solar system, it creates winds faster than sound. It teaches me that warmth can survive in cold places. That inner fire is often older than we realize. It teaches me that discovery can come from thought alone. That the universe rewards those who look deeper. It teaches me that orbits do not need to follow expectation. That backward motion can still be forward, meaning. And Triton teaches me that eruptions can be gentle. That even a volcano can whisper instead of roar. Maybe that is why Neptune feels so spiritually quiet to me. A world of storms that sound like lullabies. A world of ice that carries heat. Ah, world of mathematics that leads to emotion. Tonight, as your breath slows, and your mind softens like blue mist, let Neptune's calm guide you. Let its winds remind you that power can be silent. Let its warmth remind you that inner light endures. Let Triton remind you that every orbit, even a backward one, has a story worth telling. The universe is wide, but Neptune drifts beside you. Pluto has always felt to me like a secret whispered at the edge of the solar system. A world so small, so distant, yet carrying a tenderness that few planets possess. Whenever I speak about Pluto, my voice slows, taking on the same softness I use in a nature meditation video. Because Pluto is not a world of noise. It is a world of quiet revelations. One of its deepest mysteries lies beneath its frozen crust. Scientists now believe Pluto may hold a subsurface ocean, warm enough to remain liquid under kilometers of nitrogen ice. How can a world so far from the sun cradle an ocean? The answer may lie in internal heat. Radioactive elements slowly warming the interior. Or tidal flexing from its moon Charon, creating frictionless warmth. Planetary scientist Francis Nimmo once said, "Pluto may look frozen, but its heart is not entirely cold." And I remember pausing after reading that, feeling something human in those words, that even the most distant beings can hold warmth when no one expects it. Above this hidden ocean lies Pluto's strange atmosphere, a thin veil of nitrogen infused with hints of methane, fragile enough to appear and disappear with the planet's orbit. When Pluto travels closer to the Sun, its ice warms, releasing gas that forms a delicate atmosphere. But as it drifts outward into deeper cold, too, the atmosphere collapses, freezing and falling back to the surface. Astronomer Leslie Young once said, "Pluto breathes in centuries." A thought that still stops me, because it reminds me that time is not universal. Every world inhales and exhales according to its own rhythm. Pluto's orbit adds another layer of strangeness. There was a time when Pluto traveled closer to the Sun than Neptune. Its orbit is tilted, elongated, crossing paths with the giant world without ever colliding, thanks to gravitational resonance. Pluto and Neptune perform a cosmic dance, each step preventing the other from drawing near. Astrophysicist Mike Brown once said, "Pluto is not chaotic. It is choreographed." And in that sentence I hear a quiet reassurance that even the most unusual paths can follow harmony. Pluto also belongs to a family of worlds far more numerous than the classic planets. Dwarf planets outnumber the giants, forming a swarm of small, icy bodies in the Kuiper belt. Why so many? Because the outer solar system is a place of gentle gravity, where objects rarely collide hard enough to grow large. There, smallness is not a flaw. It is the natural outcome of distance. Sometimes I think about that when I feel far from others, and it comforts me. That being distant can simply mean you belong to a different kind of family. Haumea, one of Pluto's neighbors, carries a shape like no other, stretched into an elongated oval. It spins so fast, completing a rotation in only a few hours, that its body bulges outward. A cosmic stone whirling through darkness, reshaped by its own momentum. Planetary scientist Darin Rogozin once said, "Haumea is what happens when a world is in a hurry." I smile when I think about that, because even planets can be restless, eager, imperfect in their haste. And then there is Eris, a world so reflective that it bounces back almost all the sunlight that touches it. Its surface may be coated with frozen methane, freshly renewed by chemical cycles, keeping it bright like polished glass. Eris shines quietly, not because it burns, but because it refuses to absorb the dark. Astronomer Gonzalo Tancredi once said, "Eris reflects the sun as if it remembers it fondly." How gentle that sounds, and how deeply it resonates. Because there are people like that too. People who carry brightness not from fire, but from remembrance. When I look at Pluto, Haumea, Eris, and all the distant worlds that circle our sun like slow drifting lanterns, I realize they form a kind of cosmic poetry. Soft, cold, but meaningful. They teach us that stories do not lose power just because they unfold in silence. Pluto teaches me that warmth can survive under layers of ice, that oceans can hide beneath stillness, that a heart can beat even when the surface looks frozen. Its vanishing atmosphere teaches me that breath can return, that even long winters end. Its unusual orbit teaches me that paths do not need to be circular, that wandering can also be graceful. The abundance of dwarf planets teaches me that the universe favors the small just as much as the grand. Haumea teaches me that moving quickly can reshape a life, that momentum has consequences, but also beauty. Eris teaches me that reflection is a form of light, that returning brightness to the world is its own kind of radiance. There was a night not long ago when I looked at Pluto through a telescope, the image no more than a pale dot trembling in the eyepiece. And yet, in that tiny point of light, I saw oceans, seasons, atmospheres, collisions, reflections. It struck me then that distance does not diminish meaning. Sometimes, what is farthest away carries the deepest story. Tonight, as your thoughts soften and the world grows quiet, let Pluto's gentle presence guide you. Let its hidden ocean remind you that warmth endures. Let its fragile atmosphere remind you that breaths return. Let Haumea remind you that motion transforms. Let Eris remind you that you can shine simply by reflecting the good you receive. The universe is wide, but Pluto drifts beside you. The asteroid belt has always felt to me like a whisper between worlds, a vast ring that appears dense in imagination, yet is almost empty in truth, drifting in silence between Mars and Jupiter. When I describe it in a science sleep meditation, I picture the listener floating slowly through scattered stones, realizing that emptiness can also be a form of harmony. Many people imagine the belt as a crowded maze of tumbling rocks, but in reality the space between asteroids is enormous. Distances so wide that a spacecraft can glide through it without ever touching a single fragment. This emptiness exists because Jupiter's gravity prevented the region from forming a planet, stirring the early material, scattering it, and leaving behind only a thin echo of what might have been. Astronomer Carl Sagan once said, "The solar system is full of worlds that almost were." Every time I think of the asteroid belt, I hear that quote like a soft breath. Yet, even in this emptiness, some asteroids hold their own companions. Tiny moons orbiting bodies barely a few kilometers wide. These moons exist because of gentle gravitational capture, or because debris from ancient collisions reassembled in orbit. Planetary scientist William Bottke once remarked, "Asteroids remember every impact, and perhaps their moons are part of that memory. Fragments drawn back by the quiet pull of gravity." But not all asteroids are solid. Some are rubble piles, loose collections of boulders and dust held together only by weak gravity. These formed when larger bodies shattered, and rather than dispersing, their pieces settled back into lumpy clusters. To me, rubble pile asteroids feel like metaphors for resilience. They are worlds rebuilt from their own destruction. Proof that breaking does not always mean ending. In the middle of the belt lies Ceres, the largest object in that region, round enough to be called a dwarf planet. Its shape reveals something important. It has enough mass for gravity to pull it into a sphere, smoothing its surface into quiet balance. Ceres may even hold a buried ocean, ancient and cold, protected beneath layers of salt and ice. Planetary scientist Carol Raymond once said, "Ceres is a small world with a big past." And when I look at images from the Dawn spacecraft, I sense the truth of that. That size does not limit story. That even the humblest worlds can carry oceans within them. Beyond the belt, out where sunlight thins like fading breath, comets roam. Icy bodies with long elliptical orbits, returning again and again to the inner solar system, each visit shedding material that forms a glowing tail. These tails always point away from the sun, not because of motion alone, but because the solar wind pushes dust and gas outward. Astronomer Fred Whipple once said, "A comet is a dirty snowball with a soul." I smile every time I repeat that, because it captures the strange humanity in these drifting bodies. Some comets come from the Kuiper belt, but others arrive from much farther. The Oort cloud, a distant spherical shell of icy worlds surrounding the solar system like a silent halo. Occasionally, a passing star or the tide of the galaxy nudges one inward, sending it on a journey that may last millions of years. To think of a comet crossing interstellar boundaries, pulling behind it the cold of spaces we have never seen, is to understand how vast our home truly is. Interstellar researcher Alan Stern once said, "Comets are messengers, carrying stories from the deep past of the universe." And perhaps that is why I find them so moving, because they remind us that history does not only belong to planets. Sometimes, during late nights at observatories, I imagine drifting through the asteroid belt like a dust mote carried on sunlight. The silence so deep it feels like a velvet blanket. I picture passing Ceres, its roundness glowing, then gliding toward a comet releasing its tail, shimmering like a veil of light. In those moments, I realize how peaceful the solar system can be. We often think of space as violent, full of collisions and storms. But in truth, most of it is gentle, slow, patient. The asteroid belt teaches me that fullness and emptiness coexist. It teaches that a quiet region can still hold profound meaning. Asteroid moons teach me that companionship can form in unexpected ways. That gravity finds connection even in emptiness. Rubble piles teach me that a broken past can be rebuilt. That strength can come from recombining scattered pieces. Ceres teaches me that smallness does not limit depth. That hidden oceans can exist even where we least expect them. Comet tails teach me that direction is not always about movement. Sometimes it is about being shaped by the forces around us. Comets from interstellar space teach me that journeys can begin in places we may never know, and that travel across darkness does not diminish purpose. There was a night I remember clearly, when I watched a comet arc across the sky, its tail spreading like a soft brush stroke. The air still, the stars quiet. And in that delicate moment, I understood something simple. The solar system is not just a structure of worlds. It is a story, full of pauses, echoes, silences. A story that reminds us to move gently, to rebuild ourselves when we fracture, to reflect light even when we feel small. Tonight, as your thoughts drift like dust in sunlight, let the asteroid belt guide you. Let its emptiness soothe you. Let its fragments remind you that brokenness can become form. Let comets remind you that long journeys still carry meaning. Let Ceres remind you that small worlds can hold deep oceans. The universe is wide, but these quiet wanderers float beside you. Far beyond the planets, beyond the winds of Neptune, beyond the last faint glow of sunlight. The solar system softens into something almost mythical. Whenever I describe these distant regions in a River Secrets documentary, I imagine the audience floating slowly through a cosmic estuary, where worlds dissolve into silence and time stretches like a long, deep breath. The Kuiper Belt lies there, a wide ring of icy bodies circling the sun like forgotten lanterns, each carrying fragments of the early solar system. It contains dwarf planets, frozen mountains of methane ice, wandering objects tinted with red tholins, and remnants of the primordial cloud that once formed the planets. Astronomer Jane Liu once said, "The Kuiper Belt is the attic of the solar system. Nothing there is new, but everything is important." Those words always make me pause, because they remind me that age does not diminish value. Some objects in the Kuiper Belt gleam like polished glass, reflecting sunlight with unusual brightness. This happens because volatile ices such as methane and nitrogen constantly resurface them, smoothing away imperfections. When I see these mirror worlds, I think about how outer cold can preserve inner clarity. Astronomer Michael Brown once said, "Kuiper objects reflect the sun as if remembering a light they barely receive." A sentence that feels strangely human, because some people shine not by generating light, but by remembering warmth from long ago. Beyond the Kuiper belt stretches something even more mysterious. The Oort cloud, a vast spherical halo of icy bodies surrounding the solar system like a soft shell. Its distance is beyond imagination, possibly 100,000 times farther from the Sun than Earth. So far away that a beam of light would need nearly 2 years to cross it. We have never seen it directly, because its objects are too faint, too distant, too gently illuminated. But we know it is there because long-period comets arrive from its depths, carrying signatures of an origin far beyond the planets. Planetary scientist David Jewett once said, "The Oort cloud is the solar system's memory, a record of our beginning." And I believe him, because every comet that enters the inner sunlit world feels like a messenger from the dark outer sea. Some of these comets come from interstellar space itself, nudged by distant stars, pulled inward by a long, slow gravity. To think that an object could wander for millions of years across cold emptiness, carrying dust older than the sun, before finally falling into our sky. It is like reading a letter written before the solar system learned to speak. And then there is the question that has fascinated astronomers for a decade. Could there be a 9th planet? A world hidden far beyond the Kuiper belt, shaping orbits with its unseen gravity. Several distant objects cluster in a strange alignment, as if tugged by something massive. The idea of Planet 9 emerged from this pattern. A planet perhaps 5 to 10 times Earth's mass, orbiting far into the cold, where sunlight is only a memory. Astronomer Konstantin Batygin once said, "If Planet 9 exists, it is the sculptor of the outer solar system." And that quote always softens something in me, because it reminds me that unseen forces can still shape us. When I think about the Kuiper belt, the Oort cloud, the mirror-bright objects, the hidden worlds, I feel a sense of stillness, as if these distant regions exist outside of urgency, outside of noise. They move slowly, evolve slowly, and reveal themselves slowly, like rivers under winter ice, flowing in silence. There is a memory I return to often. Years ago, I stood beneath a clear night sky, listening to the wind pass through a stand of pine trees, the earth cool beneath my feet. A comet had been predicted to appear, and when it rose above the horizon, its tail drawn outward by the solar wind, I felt a stillness I cannot describe. It felt like reading a poem written in ice. A poem older than continents. The outer solar system teaches me many things. It teaches me that emptiness is not a void, but a canvas. It teaches me that some things shine because they are renewed, resurfaced, clarified by cold and time. It teaches me that some worlds follow orbits that seem chaotic, yet hide delicate patterns invisible to the untrained eye. It teaches me that some stories are too faint to see directly, yet powerful enough to shape everything around them. It teaches me that what is small can be numerous, and what is distant can be influential. It teaches me that mystery is not the absence of knowledge. It is the beginning of wonder. And maybe that is why I feel such calm when I speak about these distant regions. Because at the edge of the solar system, where the Kuiper belt fades into the Oort cloud, and the Oort cloud fades into the galaxy, the universe whispers rather than roars. Tonight, as your breath slows, and your thoughts drift outward like dust leaving the warm center of the sun, let the quiet worlds guide you. Let the Kuiper belt remind you that forgotten things still matter. Let the Oort cloud remind you that distance holds stories. Let the mirror bright objects remind you that reflection is its own form of light. Let Planet 9, real or not, to remind you that unseen forces still shape gentle destinies. The universe is wide, but these faraway worlds drift beside you. Leaving the solar system is not a simple matter of distance. It is a matter of gravity, of momentum, of drifting through a space so wide that even light grows tired. In calm nature narration, I often describe it as a river that widens into an ocean, where the water becomes too vast for paddles to matter. To escape the sun's pull, a spacecraft must travel for decades, gaining speed from planets, slingshotting like a stone, skipping across a cosmic lake. Voyager needed the alignment of giant worlds, a once-in-a-century opportunity to break free. Astrophysicist Ed Stone once said, "Space is not empty, it is enormous." A sentence that sounds simple, until you understand how slow even our fastest machines truly are. Yet, while our spacecraft travel outward, one telescope observes inward. Hubble, circling Earth in quiet solitude, looking not downward but outward, past the atmosphere that once blurred our vision. Its mirrors gather light from planets millions of kilometers away. Light that has traveled long distances, softened by space. It observes by remaining still, holding its gaze in silence. The way we watch a calm river surface to see faint ripples. Astronomer Nancy Roman once said, "Hubble allowed us to see the universe as it truly is, not as the atmosphere filters it." Her words always remind me that clarity often comes when obstacles fall away. If Hubble watches from afar, then the Parker Solar Probe does the opposite. It flies into the sun's breath, touching the outer atmosphere where plasma streams outward at unimaginable heat. Protected by a carbon composite shield, Parker dives closer than any spacecraft has dared, sampling particles, feeling magnetic storms. NASA scientist Noah Rawafi once said, "Parker is rewriting our understanding of the star that keeps us alive." Every time I imagine that probe streaking through fire, I feel a mix of awe and humility, that we can build something fragile and send it into a place meant to destroy everything. And yet, far beyond Parker, far beyond the planets, Voyager still speaks. More than 45 years after launch, its tiny transmitter sends whispers across interstellar space, signals so faint that Earth's giant radio dishes must listen with absolute patience. Its power comes from plutonium slowly decaying, releasing warmth that becomes electricity. It is aging, but not silent. Ed Stone said, "Voyager is humanity's longest conversation." And there is something profoundly moving in that. A machine alone in darkness, whispering homeward. But Voyager carries more than instruments. It carries a message. The Golden Record, a copper disc covered in gold, holding greetings in dozens of languages, music from around the world, nature sounds of rain and thunder. It carries images engraved in analog patterns, mountains, rivers, DNA, human faces smiling into eternity. Carl Sagan, who helped create it, said, "The record is a bottle cast into the cosmic ocean, containing something of our story." I think about that often, about how we chose to send kindness instead of power, music instead of warnings, greetings instead of fear. It teaches us more about humanity than about space. As I reflect on these missions, on Hubble's stillness, on Parker's courage, on Voyager's endurance, I feel a soft stirring inside. We are small, yes, but we reach. We are brief, yes, but we try. We send pieces of ourselves into the dark, hoping they find someone to listen. There is a moment I remember from my first visit to a deep space antenna. The night was cold, the air still, and the dish pointed upward like a white flower listening for rain. Beside me, the engineer whispered, "Right now, Voyager is speaking. It just takes 17 hours for its voice to arrive." I looked at the stars, felt the quiet, and realized that patience is part of communication. These missions teach me things I never expected. Leaving the solar system teaches me that escape requires both momentum and time. We cannot rush past gravity. Hubble teaches me that clarity often comes from rising above distortion. Parker teaches me that approaching the source of heat, pressure, or truth is terrifying, but transformative. Voyager teaches me that endurance is a form of love, to keep speaking even when the distance grows vast. And the Golden Record teaches me that what we choose to send into the world reflects who we are. Not our power, but our hope. Tonight, as your breath slows and the boundaries of thought soften. Let these missions guide you. Let Hubble remind you to rise above the blur. Let Parker remind you that touching the fire can illuminate rather than destroy. Let Voyager remind you that your voice matters even across impossible distances. Let the Golden Record remind you that your story is worth sending into the universe. The solar system is wide, the galaxy wider still, but these quiet machines travel beside you. When I guide a bedtime learning video about the mechanics of the cosmos, I often imagine the listener drifting gently through space, watching the planets move in slow, elegant arcs. Their paths are not perfect circles, but ellipses, stretched like the loops of a dancer's ribbon. This happens because gravity pulls from many directions, not just from the sun, but from the planets tugging at one another. A celestial choreography that refuses rigidity. Johannes Kepler once wrote, "The universe is written in the language of harmony." And he saw that harmony not in circles but in ellipses. Shapes that breathe. Shapes with room for imperfection. Sometimes people fear planetary alignment, believing it might produce disasters, earthquakes, strange tides. But the truth is quiet. The gravitational pull of planets on Earth is so small that even a passing truck has a stronger effect. Astronomer Neil deGrasse Tyson once said, "If planetary alignment did anything dramatic, astrologers would be out of a job because it would be obvious." The solar system aligns gently, politely, as if bowing to one another across a wide ballroom. While planets dance, their atmospheres slowly escape, drifting into space over billions of years. Sunlight splits molecules. Solar wind pushes the lightest gases upward, and thermal motion gives atoms the speed to slip away. Mars lost much of its air this way, becoming a cold desert, while giant planets hold their atmospheres tightly because gravity embraces them more strongly. Atmospheric scientist Bruce Tchaikovsky once said, "A planet's personality depends on what it can hold on to." And I have found that true not only of planets, but of people. Moons too tell stories of holding on and letting go. Some moons form from colossal impacts. When a young planet is struck and the ejected material coalesces into a new world. Our own moon is a child of such a collision, forged from fire, cooled into serenity. Planetary scientist Robin Canup said, "The moon is a scar that became a companion." A sentence that reminds me how wounds can transform into guidance. Other moons form not from impacts, but from the quiet gathering of particles in planetary rings. Small grains clumping together, merging slowly, becoming shepherd moons that help shape the rings themselves. These worlds are like pearls forming in cosmic seas, layers building gently around a seed of dust. Yet, No moon can form within the Roche limit, the region so close to a planet that tidal forces overpower gravity, tearing apart anything that tries to gather. Inside this boundary, rings exist, but moons cannot. A place of beauty built from destruction. As if the universe whispers, not everything you try to hold will stay together. Farther outward, in the cold twilight of Uranus and Neptune, something extraordinary happens. Pressure in their deep atmospheres compresses methane into diamonds, forming glittering storms of solid carbon that fall like rain. Physicist Dominic Krauss once said, "The conditions inside these planets may create literal oceans of diamonds." And when I first heard that, I felt a quiet wonder that in the most distant places, in darkness and pressure and isolation, beauty still forms. When I speak of these things, of ellipses and atmospheres, of moons born from collisions and rings, of diamond rain far beyond the sun, I feel something settle inside me, a kind of cosmic perspective, soft and grounding. The universe moves with patience, and that patience teaches me to soften my own expectations. Elliptical orbits teach me that paths do not need to be perfect to be stable. Planetary alignment teaches me that fear often arises from misunderstanding, and that truth can bring calm. Atmospheric escape teaches me that holding on is not always possible, and release is sometimes natural. Impact-born moons teach me that something beautiful can emerge from catastrophe. Ring-born moons teach me that gentleness can also create worlds. The Roche limit teaches me that boundaries matter, and that closeness without balance can lead to breaking. Diamond rain teaches me that magnificence can grow in the darkest pressure-filled places. There was an evening when I watched the sky darken over a still lake. The moon rising slowly, its reflection stretched into an ellipse on the water. The air was cool, the ripples gentle, and in that quiet moment I understood why planets move the way they do. Not in circles forced into perfection, but in ellipses, paths that allow room for drift, for pull, for compromise. Tonight, as your breath softens and your thoughts settle into a slow orbit of their own, let these cosmic lessons guide you. Let ellipses remind you to embrace imperfection. Let alignment remind you that fear dissolves in truth. Let escaping atmospheres remind you that release is part of growth. Let impact moons remind you that healing can create new worlds. Let ring moons remind you that gentleness shapes reality. Let the Roche boundary remind you to honor your limits. Let diamond rain remind you that beauty forms even in pressure. The solar system is wide, and yet these truths drift softly beside you. When I begin a soft-spoken science video about the birth of the solar system, I imagine the listener drifting slowly through a cloud of stardust, as if floating inside the first breath of creation. 4.6 billion years ago, the sun, the planets, the moons, all began as a quiet nebula, a cloud of gas and dust that collapsed under its own weight, spinning faster, flattening into a swirling disk. From that disk, fragments gathered, collided, warmed, cooled, and became the worlds we know today. Carl Sagan once said, "We are star stuff, contemplating the stars." And I think of that line every time I describe this ancient birth. As the planets took shape, the giant planets grew quickly, gathering gas in enormous quantities, becoming massive enough to command dozens of moons. Gravity is the sculptor of companionship. The bigger the world, the deeper its gravitational well, and the more easily it can capture passing objects. Earth and Mars remain modest, holding only a few moons, while Jupiter and Saturn shepherd whole families. Planetary scientist Carolyn Porco once said, "Moons are the children of gravity and time. And in their orbits, I see the quiet symmetry of cosmic families." Farther out, the icy moons hide oceans beneath their frozen shells. Europa, Enceladus, Titan, and others hold liquid water, kept warm, not by sunlight, but by tidal forces. When a moon orbits close to a giant planet, gravity stretches it, squeezes it, flexes it, generating heat in its interior. It is a strange idea that life-sustaining warmth can come from motion, not from light. Astrobiologist Kevin Hand once said, "Where there is water, energy, and chemistry, life is possible." And these hidden oceans whisper possibilities we have not yet touched. Some moons even show signs of continuing geological activity. Volcanoes erupt on Io, geysers burst from Enceladus, and Titan shows shifting surface features. A reminder that even distant worlds still breathe, still move, still reshape themselves long after their birth. Nothing in the solar system is ever truly finished. Then there are the planets that defy expectation, worlds that remain warm even when far from the sun. Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, all emit more heat than they receive. Their interiors contract slowly, releasing ancient energy and circulating storms that churn for centuries. Neptune especially glows with excess heat, driving winds faster than sound. Planetary physicist Leigh Fletcher once said, "The giants are not passive, they are engines." And perhaps that is why they feel so alive. Storm-filled, humming with power. Dwarf planets too have their own mysteries. Some with surfaces dark as asphalt, others bright as untouched snow. Their brightness depends on the ice they carry, on resurfacing by cryovolcanism, on the slow erosion of cosmic rays. Pluto gleams with nitrogen frost, while Makemake and Haumea vary dramatically, revealing histories written in reflective ice. Astronomer Michael Brown once said, "The Kuiper Belt is a museum of frozen worlds." And like all museums, each artifact tells a different story. Turning back toward the inner planets, we see how axial tilt governs climate, seasons, and even habitability. Earth's tilt of 23.5 degrees gives us spring, summer, autumn, winter. Without it, our world would lack the rhythms that shape ecosystems and civilizations. Mars tilts more wildly, causing extreme climate shifts. Uranus lies nearly sideways, giving it seasons that last more than 20 years. Climate scientist James Hansen once said, "Tilt is the silent architect of planetary weather." And I often think about how small angles shape enormous destinies. And finally, there is the matter of radiation. Giant planets emit powerful radiation belts, charged particles trapped by magnetic fields. This radiation comes from the motion of conducting materials in their interiors, hydrogen compressed into metallic states, creating fields that dwarf Earth's. Jupiter's radiation can disable spacecraft, yet it also creates auroras brighter than anything on Earth. Astrophysicist Scott Bolton once said, "Jupiter is a lighthouse in the darkness," a reminder that even dangerous forces can be beautiful from a distance. When I draw these threads together, dust clouds, moons trembling under tides, diamond-bright dwarf planets, tilted worlds with shifting seasons, giants radiating heat into the cold, I feel a kind of cosmic serenity, a recognition that every world has its own rhythm, its own pulse, its own quiet truth. And these truths carry lessons for us. The solar system's birth teaches me that beginnings can emerge from chaos and shape themselves into harmony. The moons of giant planets teach me that gravity gathers families in unexpected ways. Subsurface oceans teach me that life-supporting warmth can hide in darkness. Geological activity teaches me that being alive means continuing to change. Warm, distant planets teach me that inner heat matters more than outer distance. Bright and dark dwarf planets teach me that surfaces reveal histories, but not souls. Axial tilt teaches me that small shifts can create entire climates. Planetary radiation teaches me that power can illuminate as much as it intimidates. There was an evening years ago when I stood beneath a quiet sky, watching the crescent moon hang above the horizon like a thin smile. The wind was soft. The world was still. And I felt the same calm I feel now as I speak these words. In that silence, I realized that the solar system is not a machine, but a meditation, a slow unfolding of beauty, shaped by gravity, time, chance. Tonight, as your thoughts drift like dust in a newborn nebula, let these cosmic lessons settle softly within you. Let the birth of the solar system remind you of your own beginnings. Let the moons remind you of connection. Let the hidden oceans remind you of inner warmth. Let tilted worlds remind you that perspective changes everything. Let the radiant giants remind you that your inner heat matters. The universe is wide, yet its stories drift gently beside you.